Hey, welcome back to Burntwood Workshop. Today we're going to go over making a solar lit house number sign. And it's going to be a little bit long video because I'm going to cover some stuff in XCS. We're going to cover sealing it, painting it, the solar lights, and hanging in a bunch of different stuff. So let's get started. So to make your box, we're going to go into MakerCase, which is what I use. And MakerCase is a free program, but you can also subscribe to it for $10 a year, and you'll end up with the licensing for whatever you make. So you don't have to worry about that. You'll also end up with some added things like custom divided boxes, sliding top boxes, and 3D printed divided boxes. These are some of the things you get for the subscription. We're just going to use a basic box right now. So we want our box to be 3.5 by 3. Whoops, I did it wrong. By 12. Oh, not 122. Whoops, how did I do that? 12. Okay, so here's our box. And we can select the finger joints we want. So we don't want a zillion finger joints. We just want see, that's more, and this is less. We want something like that. Because we want to seal these up and we don't want a million of them. Oops. Right there. Okay, so there's our box, and there are our dimensions, and we want to make this a closed box. There. So there's our box. Okay, so we're going to take this and we're going to download our box. And we're going to wait. We're going to go back for a second. We got to check something here. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so we basically want the tallest part of it. Wait a minute. I'm not sure which the tallest part is now. Okay, so this is our shortest side here. This is going to be our top and bottom. So our top and bottom, we want to have our overlaps and basically the least fingers. And then the front can have the most fingers because that part's going to be on the front. Okay, so then we're going to go to download. And we're going to download to an SVG. And then we're going to bring it into XCS. Okay, I jumped the gun on that. Before you download, you want to make sure you change your thickness to whatever thickness material you're using. We're not using 1/8 inch, we're using 1/4 inch. So we're going to switch that to 1/4 inch. And that is going to change all of these. So we've got to change this to 3.5. And this to 3. And this to 12. Keep that in mind when you're doing this. And then the other thing we can do, and when we go into download, is if you don't want to delete the labels, just disable labels and download. And now we're done there, and we're going to move into XCS. Okay, so when you rotate the box, if you hold the shift key when it gets to perfectly horizontal, it'll lock. So there's our front, there's our back, there's our top and bottom. So on our front, we want to put our numbers. So we're going to pick 133. So these are our numbers. Now 133 is a fairly simple number because there's nothing that gets cut out of the center of anything. So for example, say we were doing 138. I keep hitting enter. We'd have that 8 to contend with. And now you've got to figure out how to glue these to the back of the acrylic you're going to use for your face. So in order to solve that problem, what we'll do is we'll pick a font that 8 is held. So we want to go all the way down to stencil. So there's 2 different types of stencil. There's this one and this one. Nope, this one and this one. They look about the same. This one's a little bigger. So on this, your 8 would be captive. Now, say you didn't like the 3, you could split the text. You take that 3, you can invert the path, hit edit, and you could take that 3 and connect these. Make sure they're connected. Take your scissors, clip that out. Do the same thing at the top. And take the scissors and clip those, and then you've got a solid 3. So you have less pieces to deal with. You just have that instead of multiple pieces. So that's one possibility there. Or you could find another font that looks very similar to the 8 and mix and match, whatever you want to do there. But the number we're working with is 133. We're going to delete that. We're going to pick a font that we like for 133. I already know the one I like, and that is down here at H. And that font right there works. It's Hettenschweller. Hettenschweller works really nice. So we're going to take that, we're going to drag that down. Here's our nice box. We'll take this, we're going to expand it out to a good fit. And then we're going to unlock this. And we're going to stretch this out. Now, so it looks distorted, but so it takes up more space. And then, if we want this to have a nice halo effect, we would take this and we would hit offset, and we would do an inner offset, not an external offset, and make it a little tiny bit bigger, like that. So nothing's distorted, everything's still attached. And then you're going to take your outer one, pull that out. You take this one, and you're going to release compound vector. We'll take that, and we'll slide it to about there, and that to about there. That looks nicely spaced. And there's our number sign. And then these will go over it on the other side of the acrylic to give you a nice halo effect. So now that we've got our front, there's our front with our numbers. I'm just going to group that so as we're moving things around, we don't mess it up because we've got it laid out nice. Then we have to think about our solar lights. Now, I have a set of solar lights I got from the dollar store that are really nice. They work real well. Your box size is all going to depend on your solar lights. This box is planned on those lights. Your box may have bigger lights. This may have to be bigger. That's going to be determined by obviously your solar lights. But we have a set already figured out here, and that's these right here. That's going to be copy, and we're going to bring those into here. I'm going to go paste. And these are our solar lights. Now, these solar lights, I figured out, is a nice fit at 2.359. And they fit nicely in there. So that will be our, that doesn't look quite centered. That's because it wasn't. There we go. Now they're nice and centered. Okay, so there are our solar lights. Will drop in the top, our numbers on the front, back side, and that is our sign. So once you've got your design all made, this top part is going to be in the gray area on the 40 watt, and it's going to give you warnings that this is out of area when you hit framing. But when you go to process, give it a second, it shows it. So once we got it all in there and it looks like it's going to work, we're going to hit start, okay, and go. And on this, as you can see, the S1 is cutting all the way up to the top of that 12-inch piece. And that is the grayed out area, and it's cutting into it just fine. Okay, so now that we've got this portion of everything made, what we want is a trim ring for this. And we're going to want 2 of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a rectangle that is 12 by, I believe that was 3.5. We'll verify it. 12 by 3.5. Okay, so there's our trim ring. Now the first ring we want is for the acrylic. Now this is where you're going to have to decide on your acrylic. If you're using 1/8-inch acrylic, you're going to make this out of 1/8-inch pine, out of 1/8-inch wood. If you're making it out of 1/4-inch acrylic, you got to make it out of 1/4-inch. We are making ours out of 1/4-inch. So we're going to want to make that out of 1/4-inch wood. But we want this to be an inner. We want it a little bigger than that. What that'll do is that'll cover all of your grooves. So we're going to group this. We're going to move this to, we already have blue, so we're going to move it to black. Okay, so we're going to take this, we're going to come over here, and we don't move it, we're going to move it the other way. All right, we want to make this compound vector, engrave, and now we can see what it's going to look like when it's over this. Now, this covers all of our finger joints, so you can't see them. And that's our trim ring that's going to go inside, and then the acrylic's going to go in this. And then we're going to take the outside of this again, steal this outer one. Nope, we're going to ungroup. Then we're going to steal this outer one. We're going to copy it. We're going to paste it. And we're going to make this one an internal offset. And we're going to make that just a little bit bigger. Make that about 0.35. And we're going to confirm. And then we're going to take this and we're going to make a compound vector. I'm going to move that to yellow. Engrave. Take this one and make that a compound vector. I'm going to move that to engrave. And we're going to put this one over the top of this one. Bring forward. And that reveal is what's going to hold your acrylic in. We don't want it too big because we want to see our numbers clearly. So we're going to put this over here. We're going to take a quick look at it. And as you can see, that doesn't get in the way of the numbers at all. And it should hold the acrylic in with no problem. If you're worried about how well it holds the acrylic in, you could make it bigger. You could make that piece larger. You could also make that piece out of 1/8 inch instead of 1/4 inch if you were using. So this piece here could be 1/8 inch. This could be 1/4 inch, which is what I'll probably do, just so you don't have as thick of a piece holding the acrylic on. Or you could have it be beefy and make it 1/4 inch. It's just going to make your box thicker. So that's what we've got there. And we're going to switch these back. We're going to switch these to cut. Cut. And we're going to move this one to black because I'm going to make these both the same size. Okay, so now that we've cut all of this out, we've got all of our stuff here cut. We're going to turn this all off. And then we're going to move these out of our work area. And now we're on to our outer numbers. And these are the ones that are going to go on the front of the acrylic. And on these, we want those to be cut. But we're making these out of 1/8 inch acrylic. Because if you made them out of plywood, they could peel. So the nice thing with the S1 is it cuts acrylic beautifully. So we're going to go with 3mm black acrylic. And make sure you take your film off both sides. And then we've got a speed of a power of 100%, speed of 7. And we're going to set that up and cut it out. So on the black acrylic, you can't really see the crosshairs real well. But if you put a piece of paper lined up with the corner, then you can actually get a nice accurate measurement of where you want it. So that's where we actually want our framing to be. And then we just put that piece of white paper there so we know right where that corner is. And then before we cut, we pull that out and we're ready to cut. Alright, so now that our numbers are cut out, we're going to let the fan finish. What I'm running is the inline fan, the XTool's IF2 fan, which really draws the acrylic smell out really nice. Because this acrylic, it stinks if you don't have that. Alright, and then if you're not sure if it cut all the way through, if you don't move it and you take a piece of tape, if it didn't cut through, you can run it again without moving it and have to reset everything. So there's our number cut in 1/8 inch acrylic. And then we'll glue on the front and we'll show how to assemble this. Flat. We'll put our bevel on it now. Because once this gets too thin, you can't put the bevel on it because the bearing won't hit if you get too thin. Unless you have a router table. If you have a router table, you can run it through that way. And then we're going to run this through again to make another top. Alright, so one thing that's nice about doing these videos is it forces me to put this on, which I forget half the time. So, good idea. Alright, so there's going to be our top, which will give a nice weatherproof seal for everything. And the bottom will just sand up nice, and we'll glue it on. Okay, so these are all our pieces cut out before assembly. Now what we did was on the 133, we cut this a little bit smaller as we saw, and then we made the numbers out of acrylic. And then we put a trim ring to hold the acrylic into place, and then you could make the retainer for the acrylic out of the plywood, or you could make the retainer for the acrylic piece out of acrylic so that this all matched. So that's a possibility. You could do it either way. I'm probably going to do it because I think I'm going to paint this a different color. We'll do this with the wood and paint it. And then what we did was we made a top to go over this to make it weatherproof, and this will get cut down to size and put onto this once the box is all cut out. And we beveled the edges and everything, which we showed. So what we did was we assembled the top, the bottom, the back, and the sides without the number part. And we caulked the inside just in case there's some gaps. And then if you look on here, you could see there are little gaps where I didn't squeeze this tight enough when we glued it up. So if you have those, what I do is I just go over this whole thing with a little bit of caulking. Just right around all the gaps. Because this is going to be outdoors. And if you're going to do it this way, you got to seal everything up. So we take it, we do that, take a putty knife, and we run it across. Get it. This part here is going to get covered with our extra cover, and that didn't look great, but we'll just flip it over to the side. So we got pretty well sealed there. And then we're going to do the same thing here. You see a few little gaps, just
going to run a little bit of caulking over everything. Fill in any of those gaps you see. You can do it with your finger, you can do it with a putty knife. I think it's easier sometimes with your finger, but that fills in all those gaps. And after you prime it, those gaps will show up so you see them. So now that we've got our box painted and nice and weatherproof with exterior paint, we want to put our numbers on. So we're using the frosted acrylic. We're going to stick that in, and it's a 1/4 inch thick, so I have a 1/4 inch trim ring for it. And then we're going to take our numbers, and I made it, if you recall, we made the numbers a little bigger than the actual cutout. Clean your numbers up a little bit. We're just going to put these on with CA glue. And you want to line it up so that it's pretty well centered on the number underneath. Oops. Try to push straight down, not slide it all over the place. And you can look in and see how it looks. Just gotta be careful. Okay, so I got a little bit of glue smeared, so we're just gonna take that, we're gonna wipe that off with a Q-tip so that it doesn't look shiny and blotchy there. So we got our next number. Okay, so our next number, we want to clean off the back. Make sure we get a good clean surface. It's going to go just like that. So we're going to put our glue on. You want to stay inboard a little bit so that you don't have too much smearing out. You really don't want it smeared out around the number. You want it fully behind the number so that you don't have with a shiny spot around it. And you just want to set it right on your number. Try to drop it straighter than that. Center up, that looks pretty good. And our last one. Now you could probably clean these with rubbing alcohol. Probably be the smarter move. I did not, because sometimes I rush things on my prototypes and then figure it out later, and before I do a bunch of them I have it figured out pretty well. Okay, I didn't use activator on these because I'm not sure if the activator would affect the acrylic or not. So that's something we'll try in the future. Okay, so I got my numbers glued on, and when I glued them on, I got them a little off. What I would probably do, if I did this, when I do this again, I will cut the numbers out of the piece that we used for masking and use those to lay the numbers out to get them exactly where I want them. That would be an easier way to make sure you get them exactly where you want them. You don't have a light bleed more in one spot than another. So that's something we'll do on our next one to make sure we do that. And then maybe make another one for masking, but we definitely want to do the numbers in it so that we get them straight and centered well. Okay, so we've got our piece of pine in the laser, and we've set up the center so we know right where the center is, and we've got this lined up with the back of the piece of pine. So what we want to do is we want to take this and slide this right to here so that this is the center of our cut and this is the back of our piece of pine. And because it's a 1/4 inch piece of pine, it's going to run about a similar cut as the 6mm pine plywood. Should be about the same. So we are going to process that, and that'll cut the holes out of our top. So we cut out our top and realized that somehow when we cut this out, it's not centered. When you're in XCS and you have things above what you're doing, you might want to watch when you're centering stuff that it's not centering off of something else. Now, from now on, I'm going to start verifying, but we have a function in here where we can measure. So we're going to click to measure, and we should be 2.578 on both sides. Just to be sure, we're going to come in from the other side. Well, straight is better. Might not be on.
2.579. We're pretty darn near center. That looks about right. And we can try to verify it. All right, that says it's centered. You want to go on the widest part as straight as you can, and that's about right. So now we're centered. As you can see. All right, so now we're centered. Get rid of that, and we are going to lock this. We're going to group it, and we're going to save, so that we do not have this happen again. Because now my top, instead of having a 1/4 of an inch overlap on either side, it's going to have about 1/8 of an inch gap overlap. But that's what we end up with.
Okay, so I've got my solar lights into my box. We got our numbers on. And what I did was I pre-painted my trim ring all the way around nicely with 2 coats of exterior paint, so that when I put it on, I don't have to cut in or paint anywhere near my acrylic, clear acrylic. And these are the solar lights I got. I got these from the dollar store. And basically I just pull that part off and I cut these off so they fit, so they stuck up about that much out of the top. And the reason I did that is for our other piece that goes on. And then our trim ring, when we glue that on, that will give us our full thickness here for our top piece to go on. And that's the next part we'll do after I glue the trim ring on. Okay, so we've got our top cut. This is just primed underneath around the inner part. But as you can see, we don't have our 1/4 of an inch on either side because of our little mishap. But it's mine, it's a prototype. It's not that big of a deal. When you make them for somebody else, you want to be a little better. Now to put this on, we want to silicone it to make it nice and weatherproof, and that'll hold it in place. And you want to use a really nice silicone, and you want to I'm using a clear silicone just to make sure if it does weep out the edge or something, it's not visible. And we're just gonna do a little ziggy zag in here, make sure we get it so it's secured nicely. And then we want to silicone in our solar lights, and I silicone them in on both rows. That way water doesn't run inside your light, because you don't want a bunch of water pulling up and rotting your light out. Silicone around that, and that'll set that. We're going to put our top on. And there's our top on. We want to just make sure everything is sealed up nicely. Just going to put a little bead of silicone across the front here, just so that if water rolls over the edge, it doesn't run up underneath the top. We're going to do the same down the sides and across the back. And we're also going to caulk in our lights. Okay, so we want to put a bead of silicone around our lights again. And this one we want it to be a fairly clean bead, because we don't want it looking ugly when people can see it. And of course, because I'm going around something round, it's not the most perfect bead I've ever done. Okay, that silicone, we're just going to take our finger and we're going to run it around it like that. Make it look nice. Okay, so that's sealed up really nice. Now, the silicone comes off with rubbing alcohol. So you get the silicone all over your fingers. little rubbing alcohol will take it off. And if you get it on anything else, you can just take a little rubbing alcohol and take it off. Now, I would recommend making these numbers with a little more room, because when I siliconed in this trim ring, I couldn't get the tip of the silicone gun past the numbers. So I had to take a Q-tip and smooth it out. It came out looking okay, but it's not great because I couldn't get a smooth bead. So our bead around the top looks really nice, but it's a little shiny on the paint. So because this silicone is actually a paintable silicone, we'll paint that right up to those, and we'll paint that little piece across the front, and that will make everything look nice. Okay, I'm not sure how good this is going to come out on the video, but this is our solar light lit up in the dark, just to give you an idea of how nice that's going to look at night. Okay, so here's our box, and this is done with the green. And if you did want to do the acrylic black trim ring, you'd end up with something like that. I think both look really nice. And I know this video was a little long, but I had a lot of stuff to cover. A couple things I didn't cover was cutting the acrylic, the clear acrylic, which you can't do with the S1 obviously, or a diode laser. I did those on my miter saw. I left the protective film on it when I cut it so that it wouldn't shatter and, you know, fling plastic acrylic at me, which I didn't have any chipping or shattering anyway. If you use a good blade, you should be okay. You could also use a jigsaw. You could take your piece and use a flush cut router and cut your acrylic that way. There's several different options on that. For sealing it, I used a good exterior paint for sealing it up. Otherwise, I used DAP's Ultra Clear Silicone. It's paintable. It works really nice. And for the inside, I use DAP's Dynaflex. I use that. That's a nice, flexible, good sealing caulking. The solar lights are sealed in. There's a lot of different options on solar lights. And another thing to discuss is whether to drill a drainage hole. Now, I don't know with expansion and contraction. I did leave leeway for expansion and contraction on the acrylic. I left about a 1/16 of an inch. It may not be enough. We'll find out over time. You can do more if you want, and drilling a hole in the bottom for drainage might not be a bad idea. If you get a comment, leave in the comments what you think on that. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. So I've got some other videos coming up doing more house number lightings for the front of the house that are electric, that plug in, or that are power AC. And I'll show how to wire those. The 12-volt cartridge lights work really nice. Okay, the other thing we didn't cover was hangers. I ordered them, but they didn't come in time for the video. So I'll put a link on Amazon, the hangers that I'm going to use on this. They're outdoor hangers. They're stainless steel, so they won't rust, so you don't have rust running down the front of your house. And they work really nice. They're durable, and you could use them for a lot of different things. So I'll put a link to that in the comments.